Imagine a world without the Arctic. Not in some distant, unknowable future, but perhaps within our own lifetimes. The vast, brilliant white sheet of ice that has crowned the top of our planet for millennia is vanishing. It is shrinking at a rate that is difficult to comprehend. For thousands of years, this frozen ocean has been a constant, a seemingly permanent feature of our world. It has shaped climates. It supported unique forms of life. It held a place in the human imagination as a remote and powerful wilderness. Now that is changing with astonishing speed. We are the first generations to witness this profound transformation. What does this rapid disappearance truly mean? What does it mean for you? What does it mean for the weather in your own country? What does it mean for the intricate web of life that spans the globe? The melting of the Arctic ice is not a remote issue, confined to the polar regions. It is a global event with far-reaching consequences that will touch every one of us. This isn't just a story about polar bears struggling to find their next meal. It is a story about the stability of our planet's climate systems. It is about the security of our coastlines. It is about the very future we are building for ourselves and for all life on Earth. The silent, frozen world at the top of our planet is sending us a warning. The changes happening there are a direct result of the warming of our entire globe. That warming has been driven by human activities over the past 2 centuries. The Arctic is like the planet's cooling system, reflecting the sun's heat back into space. As this reflective surface disappears, the Earth absorbs more heat, creating a feedback loop that accelerates the melting even further. We are witnessing a fundamental shift in the way our planet functions, a change that will redefine our world in ways we are only just beginning to understand. In this journey, we will explore the stark reality of what is happening. We will look at the science behind the great melt-off. We will trace the causes back to their source. We will uncover the domino effect. We will examine extreme weather events. We will examine rising sea levels. We will meet the wildlife who live here. We will meet the people who call this region home, whose lives are being irrevocably altered. But this will not only be a story of loss, it is also a call to action. It is a search for solutions. It is a message of hope, because the future of the Arctic, and our own, is not yet written. For centuries, we have viewed the Arctic as a distant, static wilderness, a place of ice and snow, largely separate from the daily lives of most of humanity. This perception could not be more wrong. The Arctic is, in fact, a deeply connected and dynamic part of the Earth's system. It is a silent giant, a regulator of global climate whose influence extends to every continent. The paradox is that this vast, sparsely populated region holds immense power over the densely populated areas of the world where most of us live. The health of the Arctic is inextricably linked to the health of our entire planet. When we look at images of the Arctic from space, the change is undeniable. Satellite photos from a few decades ago, solid expansive sea ice, even in summer. Today, fractured, diminished landscape. Vast, dark, open ocean where brilliant white ice once stood. The summer sea ice extent has shrunk dramatically. What remains is younger, thinner, more fragile. This is not a slow, gentle decline. It is a crash. The Arctic is warming more than twice as fast as the global average. Polar amplification. This rapid warming is triggering a cascade of effects. Not just surface melting under the sun's rays. Warmer ocean currents flowing into the Arctic, eating ice from below. The entire ecosystem is being thrown into disarray. Cracking of ancient ice, warming of the seas, shifting global weather patterns. The silent giant at the top of the world is awakening. Its movements are beginning to shake the foundations of our world's climate. Our exploration will follow this unfolding story from shock to solution. We will witness the scale of the melt. We will understand the scientific forces driving it. We will trace the chain of consequences, connecting the vanishing ice to the strange and extreme weather affecting us all. We will bear witness to the lives, animal and human, on the front line. Finally, we will turn our gaze to the future, examining solutions and the collective actions that can help us navigate this critical moment. The story of the Arctic is ultimately the story of us. The most powerful evidence of this change comes from above. For over 40 years, satellites have been our eyes on the Arctic, silently circling the globe and recording the state of the sea ice. When we compare these images over time, the story they tell is stark and unambiguous. Look at a picture from the late 1970s or early 1980s. You see a vast, solid shield of white. This is the multi-year ice, thick and resilient, that has survived many seasons. It was a permanent feature of our planet's geography, a polar ice cap in the truest sense. Now, let us look at an image from today. The difference is shocking. The brilliant white shield has been shattered. The amount of sea ice remaining at the end of each summer, the minimum extent, has plummeted by over 40% in just 4 decades. This is not a subtle variation or a natural cycle. It is a precipitous decline. The old, thick ice is almost gone, replaced by thin, first-year ice, far more vulnerable to melting each summer. The dramatic images of surface melt only tell half the story. The attack on the Arctic ice is not just coming from the sun above. It is also coming from the ocean below. Warmer ocean waters, driven by global climate change, are now flowing into the Arctic Ocean from the Atlantic and Pacific. These currents are carrying with them an enormous amount of heat. This invading warmth does not stay on the surface. The warmer, saltier water from the Atlantic is denser, so it sinks and spreads out in a layer deep beneath the colder, fresher surface water. From this position, it can come into direct contact with the underside of the sea ice. The ice is literally being eaten away from below. This process of basal melting is relentless. It thins the ice pack, making it weaker and more susceptible to breaking up and melting from the sun's rays during the summer. It is a silent, invisible erosion. The primary driver is the loss of the ice itself. This is known as the albedo effect. Albedo is simply a measure of how reflective a surface is. Fresh snow and bright white ice reflect up to 80% of the sun's energy back into space. Open ocean water and bare land absorb up to 90% and convert it into heat. As the Arctic ice melts, reflective surfaces are replaced by absorptive ones. More heat is absorbed by the ocean. The water warms, more ice melts, exposing more dark ocean. This is the most powerful feedback loop in the Arctic. Scientists have calculated that the heat absorbed by the Arctic Ocean due to the loss of sea ice is equivalent to a significant portion of the total warming effect from all human greenhouse gas emissions. In essence, the consequence of our emissions, melting ice, is now becoming a major cause of further warming itself. The system is accelerating its own demise. As alarming as the melting sea ice is, another, perhaps even more terrifying carbon culprit lies locked in the frozen ground surrounding the Arctic Ocean. This is permafrost. It holds an immense amount of ancient, frozen carbon. It is estimated to contain twice as much carbon as is currently in our entire atmosphere. As the permafrost thaws, microbes that have been dormant for millennia are waking up. They begin to break down the frozen organic matter, released as either carbon dioxide or, more worryingly, methane. Methane is a far more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, trapping over 80 times more heat in the short term. Scientists refer to this as the methane time bomb. Bubbles of methane can be seen rising from the surface of Arctic lakes. The potential for the permafrost to release its vast storage of carbon represents a true tipping point for the global climate. The sleeping giant of the permafrost is stirring. And that's deeply concerning. The melting of the Arctic is not a self-contained event. Its consequences flow outwards. One of the most direct impacts is on global sea levels. The Greenland ice sheet is especially vulnerable. It could raise sea levels by over 7 meters if fully melted. That lubricates the base and speeds glaciers toward the sea. This has become a rapid discharge of ice, massive glaciers calving into the ocean. Floating sea ice melting doesn't directly raise sea level. like an ice cube melting in a full glass. But land ice melting adds new water. Melt or calving adds water to the ocean, driving sea levels higher and threatening coasts worldwide. From Miami to Mumbai, from London to Shanghai, millions live in low-lying areas vulnerable to flooding, storm surges, and saltwater intrusion into freshwater supplies. The fate of our coastlines is being written in Arctic ice. The Arctic does more than just cool the planet. It acts as a crucial anchor for our global weather patterns. As the Arctic warms, the jet stream is becoming slower, weaker, and wavier. These large waves can get stuck in place for days, or even weeks. This is when we experience the weather gone wild. When the jet stream dips far to the south, it allows frigid Arctic air to spill out. Conversely, when it bulges far to the north, it pulls hot tropical air into higher latitudes. A sunny spell can turn into a month-long drought, devastating agriculture. The instability that began with melting ice at the top of the world is now manifesting as chaos in the weather we experience every day, and that's really worrying. Nowhere is the impact of the melting Arctic felt more acutely than by the life that has evolved to depend on it. For the polar bear, sea ice is not just a habitat, it is life itself. The ice is its platform, its vantage point, and its stalking ground. As the sea ice retreats earlier each spring and forms later each autumn, the bear's hunting season is being dangerously curtailed. For many, these reserves are no longer enough. We are already seeing the devastating consequences. Bears are becoming thinner, birth rates are declining, and cub survival is plummeting. Stories of polar bears undertaking marathon swims are becoming tragically common. The polar bear is the canary in the coal mine for the Arctic ecosystem. The hunter is being pushed to the edge, stranded on a rapidly shrinking island of time. The entire marine food web is beginning to unravel. At the very bottom of this web are tiny, often microscopic organisms, ice algae. They are the first link in a chain that supports all other life. As the sea ice disappears, so does this critical habitat. This disruption cascades upwards with devastating consequences. Seals, such as the ringed seal, rely on both the sea ice for resting and pupping, and on the abundance of Arctic cod for food. Whales like the narwhal and beluga are facing a new reality. The loss of ice opens up the Arctic to new species moving in from the south, increasing competition and predation. For the more than 4 million people who live in the Arctic, the vanishing ice is a direct and existential threat to their culture, their livelihoods, and their very identity. The ice is no longer predictable. Hunting routes that have been used for centuries are now treacherous or have disappeared completely. The permafrost thaw is damaging homes, roads, and vital infrastructure, making communities themselves physically unstable. The loss is more than just economic or physical, it is deeply cultural and spiritual. Elders who hold the library of traditional knowledge find that their wisdom is sometimes no longer applicable to the strange new conditions. The people who have contributed the least to the carbon emissions driving climate change are the ones experiencing its most severe and immediate consequences. Their world is being fundamentally remade by forces far beyond their control. The picture we have painted of the Arctic is alarming. It would be easy to feel overwhelmed, to fall into a sense of despair. But that is a luxury we cannot afford. The science that has so clearly illuminated the problem also shows us the path towards the solutions. It requires a fundamental shift away from fossil fuels. That transition is already underway. Rapid growth in renewables, solar power, wind power. They've become the cheapest new energy in many places. Governments must set ambitious emissions targets, end fossil fuel subsidies, and put a meaningful price on carbon. This is not just individual actions. It's systemic global change. Beyond clean energy, explore other innovations. Direct air capture technologies are being developed. offering ways to clean up past emissions. Protecting and restoring natural ecosystems, forests, wetlands. There are discussions, fraught with ethical questions, about geoengineering. These ideas require extreme caution, but their discussion underscores urgency. Inspiration comes from the Arctic itself. Indigenous communities combine traditional knowledge with modern science to monitor change and adapt. International bodies like the Arctic Council enable cooperation between nations, a platform for managing the region peacefully and sustainably. The fate of the Arctic is not sealed. The future is not yet written. The choices we make in this decade will determine the state of the Arctic for centuries to come. This is a moment of profound responsibility. We are the first generation to fully understand the consequences of our actions, and the last with a real chance to avert the worst of them. This responsibility is a collective one, and it falls upon each of us as citizens of this planet. We have the power to demand change and to make choices in our own lives that contribute to the solution. The story of the Arctic has shown us how deeply interconnected we all are. Pollution from a factory in one continent can mean a flood in a city on another continent. But this interconnectedness is also our greatest strength. It means that positive actions can also have ripple effects. Every effort, large and small, contributes to a global tide of change. The silent, frozen world at the top of our planet has sent us a clear and urgent message. We must listen to its warning. We must honor the wildlife and the people who depend on it. We must become the caretakers that our beautiful, fragile planet so desperately needs. The future of the Arctic and our own depends on it. The time for observation is over. The time for action is now.